when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And I never saw that quote until much later in life, after all this had happened. And I was telling myself, this man had revealed himself over and over and over. Yet I thought still things could be worked out. It was false hope. And had I had more information about what the abuse looks like, had I known these red flags, they're not something they're gonna be here and be gone tomorrow. I may have taken the action earlier.
Welcome to Voices of Hope, a 4-part series where we explore the lived experiences of survivors navigating towards safety, hope, and healing with support from family justice centers and their partner agencies. Through honest conversations with survivors, advocates, attorneys, law enforcement, and youth program leaders, each episode reveals the transformative power of collaboration and the human stories that move us toward more effective services and support for survivors. From courtrooms and counseling rooms to campgrounds and police precincts, this series offers a rare window into what it truly means to support domestic and sexual violence survivors using a coordinated, trauma-informed, hope-centered approach. This podcast contains conversations about violence. The content may be difficult to hear, so please take care while listening. Hi. Leaving an abusive relationship is never simple, but for many survivors, the civil legal system provides a lifeline. In the second episode of our 4-part series, we sit down with Sonia of the Guilford County Family Justice Center in Greensboro, who shares how she builds trust with survivors and helps guide them through some of the toughest times of their lives. We'll also hear from survivor Yu Lee, who credits the center with helping her rebuild her life after escaping an abusive partner in 2018. Yu tells us how her abuser tried to shift blame onto her, leading to her own arrest, and how the support she found at the Family Justice Center and through the civil legal process set her on the path to safety and healing. Together, we'll explore how legal protections, advocacy, and community support can shape a survivor's journey out of abuse. Well, our first guest today is Anna Lee, a survivor of domestic violence, who credits the Family Justice Center in Greensboro, North Carolina, and specifically Sonia Desai, who we'll be talking to in the second half of this episode, with helping her rebuild her life in 2018. She now serves as the worship director at Westover Church and previously taught voice and worship at Liberty University. Originally from Seoul, South Korea, and raised in Washington, D.C., Anna is also the proud mother of 2, Ethan, who just started middle school, and her daughter, Anna Jr., a 4th grader. So welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Our kids are the exact same age, which is so
Are they
funny to
really?
me.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
I just had
amazing.
one that just started middle school.
Oh,
Is it
no.
also giving you anxiety like it's giving me?
Absolutely. I'm excited, but at the same time, it's scary because,
It is.
middle
Because
school's a
it's
wild time.
so much different. Yeah. They're
Yes,
such big
yes.
kids now,
Yes, yes.
So I wanted to hear a little bit about your journey, your experience. What made you decide that you wanted to share it today on Voices of Hope?
So as a domestic violence survivor, I mean, growing up, I never thought this would be a part of my story. And when it became my story, initially there was a lot of shame and fear involved, and I was ashamed of what had happened to me. And in many ways, I felt like that's something that defined me, although now I know it wasn't. But during that time, that weight of shame was just so heavy. And also there was a lot of fear, just going back into the world, because you've been put down so much. You think, well, what am I going to do now? There really isn't anything I can do well. I'm just going to mess up everything I do. So I just wanted to talk to those that are coming behind me and tell them that someone like them has survived and is doing well. And there's still so much more to grow and more to learn, but you're going to make it. So that's why I wanted to share today.
I love that. I love that. As much as you are comfortable with, can you share a little bit about what you faced during your time with an abusive partner?
Yes, ma'am. So I actually wrote down a little bit because I knew I was going to take up all of the time if I didn't. It's like at least a 3-season K-drama.
Right.
But if you want all the details, please have me back. But
Yeah.
basically from the start of it, this was a family friends acquaintance that became friends with me, was more than almost 10 years older than me. So I looked to him as an older brother.
Mm.
The way it started, we were friends, we had mutual friends, and he approached me that way, and I was raped. And because of the messed up beliefs I had in my system, I thought I had to marry him. I really thought the only way to redeem all that and that not to become a sin that's gonna stain my entire life was to marry him.
Oh, man.
So, that's how it all got started, and, after he completely isolated me from all my friends and family, basically, he just kept me on the wheel of power and control like a little hamster, and there really wasn't anything in that circle. I never got to see that diagram until far later in my life, and when I
Mhm.
saw that, I was like, "There's not a single strategy that he didn't use." So everything in that diagram went through and until finally the law enforcement got involved and um it was time.
Jeez. God, I'm so sorry. That is brutal. It's
It-
a shame that survivors I mean, I've heard from so many survivors say something similar about that
Mhm.
power and control wheel,
Yes.
or the cycle of abuse, whichever
Mhm.
one, whichever diagram they've seen is like
Mhm.
they see it after the fact and they're like, This is
Absolutely.
exactly what I went through." We
Yes.
should almost like hand it out as like when someone goes into like middle school or high school, like, here you go. Just keep this in
Absolutely.
your back pocket just
Yes,
so you have it.
ma'am. Mhm.
What was the final straw for you that made you realize it was time to get out and seek help?
So it's funny, there are like two layers to my final straw. And basically the very first one was what kind of terminated being able to be in the same space even was that, as I said, law enforcement got involved. And after he was violent with me, I got arrested because he framed
What?
yeah, yes. Everybody's like, "What? Say that again." Like, yes, I was the one that got arrested because he framed me and basically lied to the officers and said that I was abusing him, I was being violent, and I was taken away, with the bling bling and the car ride and full on got locked up. And sitting
God.
in that jail cell was what made me realize, like, I did everything I possibly could to hold this together. But it doesn't seem like this is going to work. But even still, after being released and trying to find resolution, because I was released with the order that says no contact with victim. So I wasn't allowed to go home if he was there. And my babies back then were only 2 and 4. So I sought help at Family Justice Center. And really, the real final straw was after consulting Sonia and talking to Jessica, I still came home thinking, there's got to be a way to work this out. I'm sure, he's after all this, I'm sure he's gonna be remorseful, he'll repent. Um, but really what made me make that final decision was Sonia's phone call day after I talked to her. She called and she was just not at all pushy, very calm. If you've met Sonia, you'll know she's the
I have,
calmest
yeah.
voice and she is
Yeah.
amazing. And that phone call with her, I felt like was a voice of God. And I really
Mm,
felt like through her, God was saying, it's time. Enough is enough. And
right.
so that's why I ended up seeking help. So that was my final straw.
Oh, that sounds horrendous, and we know that that's a tactic of abusers, to do the reversal of the blame. Sometimes it's called DARVO, where they
Mhm.
redirect the blame onto the survivor of abuse,
Yes.
and somehow they're believed. I
Mhm.
boggles my mind every time. Um,
Eh, very
yeah, so
very talented liar, and
I mean, that's what they're
yeah.
good at, right? They're
Yes.
manipulative and
Mhm.
they know how to turn it on and off and
Yes,
play the
ma'am.
victim or be
Mhm.
the intimidator. You probably kind of already answered this, but I wanted to ask about Sonia Desai because
Yes.
you said that you described her as your superhero. So can you tell me a little bit about like what role she played in helping you actually leave this guy?
Yes. So there's one person in the world I can never say no to, and that's Sonia. If she ever asks me anything, answer is always yes.
Mhm.
Um, And as I described, she really is my superhero. She was the first one I met. She's now the manager at FJC.
Mhm.
Such a great decision. Um,
Yeah.
kudos to the leaders. She was a navigator when I met her. So
Okay.
she was the first one I met. I got to talk to her. And the whole time I talked to her, I mean, I'm still in a state of shock. So whatever is coming out of my mouth, I'm also hearing as she's hearing me speak. And she just helped me. She never made decisions for me. She never directed the path, but she just listened. And if there were beliefs that were wrong, that were incorrect, and if these are still beliefs from the lies that I've been told over the years, she would just gently she would just shed a light to it. So I
Yeah.
was able to see, even just starting with, changing my identity from a victim to
Mhm.
survivor, that did a huge thing for me mentally, and the mentality shifted from, "No,
Mhm.
I am no longer a victim, I'm not under his power, and I'm a survivor, and I am going to survive. I'm gonna be more than a survivor." So Sonya's helped me pretty much get my emergency restraining order. So Sonya directed me to Jessica Nicholson, who was the advocate for my case. And with Sonya and Jessica, they pretty much had a full package of help for me. So I got all the legal assistance that I needed in getting a 50B emergency. So the ex-husband was basically asked to leave the house so that I could be with my
Mm.
babies. And they also helped me extend that emergency 50B to a full year one, and that help came through legal aid. So at one point, I had like 3, 4 lawyers working with me, all free of charge, and they just were amazing. And that
Yeah.
all came through Sonya's leadership and Jessica's diligence. Because I mean, if ever since I got in there and decided to proceed, everything was done just like that. It was almost like they were just eager and waiting to help and just waiting for me to say yes.
Yeah.
And so with that, they also helped me move out of the residence where I was because we didn't feel safe there. I thought maybe he might still show up at night.
Sure.
So and we were at a rental, so they got me out of there without any penalty for leaving early, breaking the lease. And whatever other help I needed, they just provided. I also got connected to a counselor, and FJC has amazing counselors, and my very favorite Lindsay Lar, she's just a gift to the world, and she's an angel. So she's the one who talked to me from pretty much day one, and she helped me walk through the process, and I saw
Mhm.
her for about 3 years. And fall of 2021, I felt like, Lindsay, I think I can try this on my own now, but I know where to come if I need help again. And
Mhm.
even now, I still keep in touch with her. We've had some recent issues for the children with the ex-husband. So I've actually reached out to Lindsay. So now my son will get to see Lindsay sometime soon.
Oh,
So I'm looking
good.
forward to that. And all of that came through basically Sonya connecting me to everything I needed,
Yeah.
and just helping in times of need. It was wonderful.
That's amazing. And like you said, they are just waiting. They are waiting and
Mhm.
eager to help survivors. I mean,
Yes.
that's what they wanna do
Yes,
because
ma'am.
we end the epidemic of violence against women, one survivor at a time. And I know
Mhm.
you're talking a lot about what they were doing initially to, like, get you
Yes.
back to your babies, get you back in your
Yes.
house, kick the husband out.
Mhm.
As most survivors of abuse know, domestic violence doesn't end the moment you leave your abusive
Correct.
partner. So I'm curious, did the Family Justice Center play a role, or did Sonia play a role going forward with everything that happened post separation, with all the things that I'm sure happened legally and child
Mhm.
custody wise?
It's funny you should ask because so all that happened in 2018, and we're 7 years away from there now in 2025. And I still early this year had to reach out to FJC because, as you mentioned, like, it just takes a very long time. And
Yeah.
the aftermath, it really is not gone instantly. So I actually had to reach out regarding some things with, so now I am free from the control and power of the ex-husband, but my children still are under some effect.
Mhm.
So now having to deal with that and protecting my children and knowing what I can do legally to protect them, all of that, I know that anytime I need any help, I can always go to a family justice center. I mean, because really any question you bring to a lawyer is very expensive because
Yes.
it costs a
Yeah.
lot to get legal help. And
Yeah.
knowing that Family Justice Center is always there and they have the answers, and they actually, I mean, they can pretty much fast track all the emergency cases for you.
Mhm.
So after the separation, thankfully, I had an elder at my church that decided to help me with the divorce case. So, Family Justice Center has lawyers, Elon lawyers, that will work you through the workshop for divorce papers,
Mhm.
but you're not represented by a lawyer for the divorce through Family Justice Center. So they prep you up, they get everything done for you, but when you go to the court, you don't have a lawyer.
Mhm.
But my church connected me to one of the elders who's a lawyer, who's a family lawyer, and he was the one who helped me through the final stages of the divorce. But
Mm.
even with that, because of the violent history and because of the ex-husband making choices and decisions that are not very wise and not very safe for the rest of us, um, I still had to make sure I did reach out and ask about, like, extending, the 50B. I was
Yeah.
explained that although there still is a good chance he might do something not very wise, because he hadn't violated it, I was unlikely to get the extension, but should anything happen, we can fast track it again. So just knowing, having that assurance of if something goes wrong, I always have the safety net to catch me.
Yeah.
So that was something major they helped with. And immediately after the separation, and at that time, my ex-husband was the primary breadwinner for the family. And because he was angry, he refused to deposit any money into the account. And I had two little ones.
Sure.
And Family Justice Center actually connected me to social services. So I was able to get assistance through there.
Oh,
And
good.
even that, I knew if I went ahead and did it by myself, it would have taken a much longer time. But because Jessica called a contact that she knew over there, I was able to submit my paperwork and get things rolling that very day. So just the amount of and the efficiency of how things get done, there's a very big difference on when you go at it alone than you going with Family Justice Center. So they've always
Yeah.
done that, and like I mentioned, like, I got to see Lindsay for 3 years, all free of charge. Um, like I said, she really is the best counselor in the whole world. And, I just, it was like visiting a friend and just
Yeah.
receiving healing every visit. And I wasn't tied to, they didn't give me a number of visits I could do, so they said as much as you need. And, so I started off initially, like, every week, and then after I felt like I was on a somewhat of a little more stable road, I was able to see her once a month, and then, stretch that out to, like, once in 2 months. And even when I graduated from the counseling session, I was told, like, "Hey, if you ever need to come back, we're here." So it wasn't like a termination of anything.
Yeah.
So just knowing that I can always reach out and receive the help rather than worrying about, like, "Oh, what if they don't help me this time? Like, I wonder if they'll still accept these things for me. I wonder." So there's no question regarding that. It's always there, always available. And one amazing thing that I got to do with Family Justice Center a few years ago, I believe it was in 22 or 23. I think it was 2022. I got to share my story at their conference,
Mhm.
and just to see those that save people like me and every worker there, I mean, they have a huge part in saving lives, and just to see those faces and be able to share with them my story and thank them on behalf of all of us, that was just an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love hearing about that, especially the part about being able to go back to them after the fact and not ever questioning whether or not their services are still available to survivors.
Mhm.
Because we've long said that survivors cannot do this on their own.
That's
I
right.
mean, certainly there are probably some exceptions to that where survivors have definitely done it on their own. but it's just a lot easier,
Mhm.
and a lot more healing to have a support
Yes.
system behind you, because it's just so much for any
It
survivor to
really
navigate.
is. Yes.
Um,
And some days you feel like you can make it, and some other
yeah.
days you're just in the valley and you're like, I don't even know what am I gonna do to get to tomorrow. And
Mhm,
just knowing that they're there, they always have your back. And like I said, like even this year, 7 years from when all that happened, I could go back and ask legal questions. Um, and my case is a little more complicated because my ex-husband is a non-American citizen, so he doesn't belong to this country.
mhm,
So in dealing with all that, now I would have had to if Family Justice Center wasn't there, I would have had to seek out like an immigrant lawyer, and
mhm,
that's a whole nother deal. So just knowing that I can always bring questions and get answers,
mhm.
even 7 years down the road, it's just been amazing.
Very cool. And on that note, what advice would you give a survivor who might be noticing red flags in their relationship but isn't ready to seek help or fully knows that they are being abused and still hasn't reached out yet because they don't think anybody will believe them or they are scared to?
Um, I believe it was Maya Angelou who said, and I said I wrote it down. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time.
Yes, I
And
love that quote.
I never saw that quote until much later in life, after all this had happened. And I was telling myself, this man had revealed himself over and over and over. Yet I thought still things could be worked out. It was false hope. And had I had more information about what the abuse looks like, had I known, these red flags, they're not something they're gonna be here and be gone tomorrow, I may have taken the action earlier. Um, so for those that are still hesitant to ask for help, I would say, you really only have one life, and don't hand that over to somebody that's gonna steal, kill, and destroy it. Um, if you're not ready to talk about it with somebody that you don't know, because Family Justice Center organization, most likely everybody there will be new to you, at least talk to somebody that is trustworthy and that loves and cares for you, whether it's a family member or friend. Because sometimes, some of us come from family background that's not very loving or
Right.
reliable. So just somebody that has your best interest at heart and somebody that you can trust because the abuser's red flags are not your shame that you have to hide. And it is not a project that you have to fix. It's not for that person is an individual on their own. You don't have to carry all of their baggages and their burdens. So I
Yes.
would I would say if you are noticing something and if your gut tells you like something's just not right, then run it by somebody that you really love and see what they say because they'll tell you somebody who really loves you will tell you if something's not okay.
Mhm.
And that may be a good indication, if the ones that love and care about you say, like, I don't think that's okay or I don't think that's right, then that may be a good place to start. Okay, then maybe I do need to talk to somebody, an organization that has an idea of what these things look like and what I need to do about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's an excellent point. I loved everything you just said. But how many of us have been gaslit by a partner,
Mhm.
abusive or not, right? Like, how many
Yes.
of us have been in a relationship where we're thinking we're the problem, like we're the reason this isn't working. We need to, especially as women, right? We put all the blame on ourselves.
Mhm.
We need to be better. We need to be more
Shoulda, coulda,
loving,
wouldas.
right? More
Mhm.
supportive, and we don't realize till we
Right.
talk to a friend that like, they might shine a light on it and say, "Hey, that's actually not normal. That's actually not healthy. It's actually
Yes.
not what you deserve."
Yes.
Um, that happens to so many survivors, because
Absolutely.
gaslighting is one of the main tactics of abusers, is to
Mhm.
convince you that what is
Right.
happening isn't happening.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah. So
And I
it's
mean,
hard to
and I
see.
yes, and I say that because I've been in that same place where he would look at me right dead in the eyes and tell me a lie about myself, what I did or what I said, which is 100% lie. Then still in my brain, I start thinking, "Oh, maybe I did do that."
Yeah.
And so you cannot have a normal conversation with somebody that's gaslighting you, or somebody, that person who is so perfect that that person never does anything wrong and everything's always on you. Um,
Yeah.
you can't have normal conversations with them.
Right.
So somebody who loves and cares for you will tell you that you really need to seek help. And
Yes.
so I would say go for it.
Right. Right. I mean, just talk to somebody regardless. You don't have to be ready to
Absolutely.
leave. You don't have to be ready to
Absolutely.
take actions.
Mhm.
Just reach out and get that validation that yeah, something
Absolutely.
is wrong.
Mhm.
Um, Also, is there any advice that you would give advocates that might help them better connect with and help survivors of domestic violence?
Um, and I know everybody is not Sonia and Jessica and Lindsay. I am sure everyone that serves with Family Justice Center are just truly amazing. I thought long, this is actually the question I spent most time thinking about to answer, because I
Mm,
was like, what can I say that might, then again, I just honestly could not think of anything,
yeah.
because the way they helped me was just so amazing. And if I may take this opportunity to tell the advocates, like, I really want you to know that you are saving lives and that you are superheroes, because the amount of the extent of impact that you have on the survivors' lives and their children, that is through their entire lifetime. I mean, this is a forever impact. So on the days that you wonder, is this even worth it, or what the heck I'm doing? Because we all have those moments. We all have bad days. If
Yeah.
there ever comes a time that you as an advocate wonder, like, does this even matter? Oh, you are leaving an eternal legacy. So I really hope you know that. And actually, I got Family Justice Center's information from a magistrate at the court. And,
Mm,
he was I was actually just running around in the courthouse because I needed to get home somehow, and the order had already been released, and I was like, "I need to find somebody that can help me." So while I was running around like a chicken with his head cut off in the courthouse, um a magistrate actually, like, he tracked me down because I went to that office first, and
mhm,
I was sent to another place, so I'm just running around, and he, like, followed me to find me and gave me a piece of paper that said Family Justice Center and a phone number, and he even showed me through the window where that building was, and he said, "This is what I remember." He said, "These are the people." He never said, "This is an organization." He said, "These are the people that help someone like you who is being wronged at home."
mm,
And that just gave me all the courage to go see them. And so I hope that the survivors know that. And I also hope that the advocates know that that's how they're viewed. I mean, this
mhm.
is a job and it's a work, but it's so much more than that.
Right. Right. Oh, that's so good. They're gonna love to hear
I
that.
hope
Thank you
so.
so much, you. Thank you for
Thank
being on
you.
here. Thank you for sharing your story. Um, you are so positive, and I'm just amazed by how much joy and light you have in your life despite enduring all this. So, thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Thank you, Amanda.
So, next up, we are talking to Sonia Desai. She is the site supervisor at the Guilford County Family Justice Center in Greensboro, North Carolina. She has been with the Family Justice Center since its establishment in June 2015. With almost 20 years of experience, she is an expert in the field of domestic and sexual violence and strangulation. Prior to her work at the FJC, Sonia has worked as a victim advocate with the Greensboro Police Department's Special Victims Unit. She also worked as a co facilitator for the Domestic Violence Intervention Program with Family Service of the Piedmont, and she currently chairs Greenboro's high risk team and the FJC's working partner team. Sonia was a part of the steering committee and the development of the Family Justice Center in High Point. She is a recipient of many commendations, most recently accepting the City of Greensboro's Human Rights Award. Whew, that's a bio. Sonia, thank you so much for joining us. You are obviously very good at what you do, as we will get into, because Yuli was singing your praises in the earlier interview. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today and just explore some of the different things around advocacy.
Mhm. I mean, it's such important, life-changing, life-saving work. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about how you found yourself in an advocacy role? Was this a path that you always knew that you were gonna go down?
Right. So I was thinking about this question actually, and no, I don't believe any kid growing up is like, yeah, I really want to be a victim advocate. Part of it
Right.
is because kids don't know what victim advocates are. And so just growing up, I always wanted to help people in some way. Went to school for criminology and I really liked working with law enforcement and attorneys. And so once I graduated college, a lot of times victim advocacy is a role that you get. It's one of the first roles you get if you want to be in this field. It's almost considered entry level, which I don't think it should be, but that's how it was about 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And I rolled into a position with the Greensboro Police Department. I was embedded in their special victims unit at the time, and I just absolutely loved it. I loved working with cops, but I also loved working with survivors and helping them through some of their, very difficult situations. And I think that, if you stay in this field for 20 years, um, it's a calling. You know that that's like what you're supposed to do and what you were meant to do. I've talked with many very strong advocates from across the nation. I think about Michelle Morgan from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. I think about Becky Bullard, in Nashville, and they are like powerhouses, and they have really, really transformed what advocacy is. So I'm really glad to be a part of that movement.
Mhm. Well, we are very lucky to have you. You was telling me that she thinks of you as a superhero. That's how she described you. Someone who basically relentlessly supported her in her darkest moments. And she told me after we were finished recording, that without you, she would have likely returned to her abusive husband. That impact must be really deeply moving, but also heavy to carry. What do you do to take care of yourself and keep going in a role where you hear so many painful stories of abuse day after day?
Sure, and I mean, what a compliment, that, she has given me. I am definitely not a superhero. If you're a superhero, you have to have a superpower, and I definitely don't have a superpower. But
She
in
would
saying that,
disagree.
she is the hero of her life. She took so many risks, and, she was just so brave as far as her situation. I just was lucky enough to connect with her and meet her on one of the most difficult days of her life. I still remember the day that I met her, and it's been years now. And just how down and out she was. But that, relates to your question. I mean, I got to see you, Lee, transform her life. I got to see her free of her abuser, and I got to see, like, her kids, start to grow up in this world, and I got to see her, she if you saw her the day that I met her, and then you see her today, she looks like a totally different person. The weight has been lifted off of her. She has life in her, and that correlates to why I stay in this field, because, I get to see transformation. And it also correlates to what do I do to take care of myself? I get to think through all of the people that our Family Justice Center has helped. I get to, see, advocates helping other people, and that really helps me to think about that. But on a more simple answer to that is I do a lot of running. I really like
Mhm.
hiking. And I have a lot of really great people that surround me and encourage me.
Mhm. Well, good. And on that note, can you tell us a little bit about how family justice centers help support the work that you do with survivors?
Sure, absolutely. So I think that family justice centers, they truly are, um, they are, the present, but they are the future, as far as work with survivors of domestic and sexual violence, child abuse, elder abuse, human trafficking, stalking, all of that. I believe that every community should have a family justice center. One of the things that I speak about a lot is in 2023, in the city of Greensboro, we had the highest homicide rate in the city's history. Um, and I mean, that included all homicides, so gang violence, random homicide, domestic homicide. And we took a deeper dive into that statistic, and about 17% um, of those homicides were domestic violence related. And so
Wow.
there's a good thing and a bad thing. So
Mhm.
the good thing is no one that was killed that year to a domestic violence homicide had ever come into the Family Justice Center. And what that tells us is if a person comes into a Family Justice Center as a victim, their survival rate goes up significantly. If
Sure.
people receive wraparound services, so if they get, legal consult, if they speak with a law enforcement officer, if they talk to an advocate, a social worker, a counselor, their survival rate goes way up. I mean, obviously, we're certainly looking into how we can better reach our community because we want everyone to come into the Family Justice Center. But what I will say is Family Justice Centers work. I know I lived it. I worked in a community 20 years ago without a Family Justice Center. And um, we assisted a small amount of people, and we did a really good job at it. We did a great job at it. However, we weren't reaching the larger community. And when you have all of those services in one place, where a person can access it, it makes their survival rate go up.
Mm. That's amazing. That's I mean, have you compared the numbers since then? Has the homicide rate stayed the same?
I believe our homicide rate actually dropped.
Good.
You know, uh, this statistic around Guilford County. So in 2015, when we first opened our Family Justice Center, um, we our homicide rate was very high. So in 2013 and 2014, this is before the FJC opened, Guilford County had the highest rate of domestic violence homicides in the state. And so our stakeholders came together and they said, we have got to do something to change how survivors access services. And so we created a family justice center in our community. The the next few years, our homicide rate was basically at zero. And then, of course, in 2020, COVID happened, so
Mhm.
that changed a lot. The pandemic changed a lot. One of the things that we are most proud of is, when our stay-at-home shelter-in-place orders came down from our governor's office. It was Governor Cooper at the time. We had to decide if we were going to keep our Family Justice Center open. And at the time, our director, Katherine Johnson, and I were sitting there and we looked at each other and we were like, I think we're going to have to stay open, right? Because domestic and sexual violence and child abuse breeds behind closed doors. And so we decided to stay open and serve our community. We were certainly scared. I was the person always wearing the mask and the gloves, probably over the top. However, it was our mission to serve our community. Our homicide rate did go up. However, if we were not open, I think it would have been not a good situation.
Right, much worse. Because what I've heard from so many people who have either access family justice centers or work at family justice centers is because of, like you said, the wraparound services, it encourages more survivors to come forward because they're not so intimidated about, well, where do I go after I talk to the advocate? How do I navigate the court system? what if I need other social services or shelter or job employment assistance, things like that.
Mhm.
So, I mean, would you agree that that is one of the main reasons why survivors feel more comfortable coming into a family justice center?
Absolutely. And that group of people, they become your little team, right? So you'll always have the same detective, social worker, advocate, navigator, counselor, attorney, and that survivor says, "Wow, this group of people, they're all cheering me on. They are going to help me." And I think it makes it a lot easier, instead of just one person, cheering you on. I do think that's important, but when you have a group of people, you're more likely to succeed.
Right. Especially if you are a survivor of abuse and been told for so long that you don't matter and that
That's
no one
right.
will believe you
Mhm.
and nothing will ever change, to have a group of people behind you telling you the exact opposite
That's right.
must be amazing.
That's right.
How do you personally build trust with survivors when you first meet them?
Sure. I listen to them. A lot of times survivors come in and you're the first person that they're gonna tell their story to, and, just letting them just talk, and just be present in the moment, I think that's really important. So, just being able to connect with our survivors, one of the things that I always want to make sure of is, just have to meet them where they are. And, you can ask a survivor about their past, but one of the most important things to ask a survivor is, "Where do you wanna be in 5 years?"
Mm,
And a lot of times you see this, like, aha moment because it's like, "Okay, I wanna be, in school, or I wanna make sure that my kid gets to do X, Y, and Z." And you see all of these different possibilities, that they are telling you, and so it kinda gives them this, like, recharge and, like, "Hey, there's a future, there is hope out there." So that is something that I do a lot with survivors. Once we, talk through their situation, I always ask them, "Where do you wanna be in 5 years?" And it's that moment of hope.
oh, it's amazing because I bet they haven't given a lot of thought to that. They've probably
Mhm.
just been trying to survive day to day.
That's right. That's right.
What unique opportunities to help survivors do you feel like advocates have that other industry professionals like attorneys or law enforcement may not have?
Right. So I think advocates are often the most important people in the room. We know that, and it's just what we were talking about in the very beginning. We know that a lot of times advocates, it's entry level positions. They're not paid the greatest. Oftentimes they're kind of thrown into a situation, and there may be like lack of training because there's lack of funding for trainings and all of that. And so sometimes I think advocates have a hard time, of speaking up. But I think that their opinion and their advice, all matter a lot, and they
Mm,
hold information that no one else has. They are typically the closest person to the survivor in the room. And so I think we really need to focus on valuing, the opinions of advocates. I, um, I chair our high risk team,
mhm.
here at the Family Justice Center. And so typically when we're staffing a case, we have the law enforcement officer, the attorney, the social worker, the advocate. And a lot of times advocates, don't speak up. And I always like to prompt them, and give them that platform because usually they have this piece of information, that everyone's like, "Oh, I get it now. This is why X, Y, and Z is happening."
Mhm.
So I think, we really need to focus, on what the advocate has to say.
Mhm. And speaking up is definitely one way to help in this situation. But do you feel like there are any other ways that advocates can help the other professionals in the room, as you say, like attorneys and law enforcement, provide survivor centered care? Because, you was talking to me about being arrested when she had
Mhm,
called law enforcement for help. And that does happen from time to
mhm.
time where the abuser will turn the blame around onto the survivor. How can situations like that happen a lot less in the future?
Sure. I think it's about educating, different providers. I think it's important for advocates to be in the community, doing education, particularly for law enforcement. We're lucky enough to train all of our cops in domestic violence. We also are able to talk to different like if we go to the bar association or if we go and we meet with social workers, all of that. I think it's important for us to get as much information out there as to what domestic violence is. A really good example, I remember one time one of our attorneys, our civil legal attorneys, was meeting with a domestic violence survivor. And during that meeting, the attorney says to the survivor, "Well, you are not a victim of domestic violence." And I was like standing there and I was like, "What did she just say?" And I'm like halfway angry, but also like, "What? She is
Yeah.
she is a victim of domestic violence." Well, it turns out the attorney was quoting the law. She was looking at the law. And in the eyes of the law,
Mm.
in that certain statute, that victim did not fall into a victim of domestic violence. But it didn't mean that she wasn't a victim of domestic violence, but that was just the statute. And so, it was that very odd moment where you're like, "Oh, okay." And then I'm just pulled the survivor aside and I just, lifted her up and was like, "I
Yeah.
think this is more of a conversation." And then I was able to talk to that attorney, later on outside of the situation. I was like, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't have worded it that way.
Mhm.
Maybe you should have said, talk to her about the statute and how the
Yeah.
statute requires, this, and this in order to be considered a victim of domestic violence in the eyes of the law." And the attorney was like, "I never thought of it that way. That makes
Yeah.
sense." And, I talked to her. I was like, "Yeah, it was kind of like offensive. And like, we want to be careful about that because she truly is a victim of domestic violence." So it's getting out there as an advocate, educating different disciplines, being open to learning about other disciplines. Um, and I think that actually makes it a better experience for the survivor.
Yeah. And for the other professionals too,
That's
who
right.
might not put their foot in their mouth like that.
Right, right.
That's
Yeah, a lot of
with
times they
my
just
kids.
don't know, you
Yeah.
know?
I was gonna say with my kids, that's what we call inside thoughts. We keep those
Yeah.
thoughts inside. They don't need to come out. Yeah, I totally agree that more education is definitely needed.
Mhm,
Because in that case, it just sounds like she didn't think about the ramifications of what she was about to say and
mhm,
how that might echo something the abuser had said to that victim before,
mhm.
which is, you know, this isn't domestic violence.
Yeah.
You're
What
you're imagining all of it.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that we do, as far as training law enforcement, we actually when, people are going through the academy, so when the recruits are going through the academy, we join in their practicals. So that's when they're doing these, like, scenarios of where law enforcement is responding to a domestic violence situation. And a lot of times we'll play the role of survivor. So
Mm,
the law enforcement officer is responding to the house where there's domestic violence. Um, and we're able to train these rookies in what to say and how to say it, and how to, maybe sit down with the victim instead of standing over them and asking a lot of questions, giving them a little bit of time, um, and training them in just what trauma-informed care is, or I know Casey Gwen uses the term kind-heartedness. I think
mhm.
that's really important, and what law enforcement realizes is, wow, if I just take a few minutes and I'm calm, the survivor's gonna be calm, and they're gonna give you a lot more information, and they're gonna trust you, and when you say go to the Family Justice Center, they will because they correlate you to the Family Justice Center and they trust you. So I think that's really important. But also, one of the things that I learned during practicals is sometimes we would have survivors come in and they're like, "It took so long for law enforcement to come and speak to me because of this, this, and this." But they didn't quite understand, like, what that was, like, what that situation was, and a lot of times it was officer safety. So I was
Mm,
able to see, like, how they were responding, how they had to check the house, how they had to go through every door, how they had to make sure that the scene was safe before they could come and talk to, the victim. So it kind of worked
yeah.
out both ways.
Yeah. That's another important part of the puzzle to learn too. Um, your work is obviously life changing, but you can't do it alone. So, what are some practical ways people in the community might be able to help you, whether or not they've personally experienced abuse?
Mhm. We just started a program, it's called Court Navigation. We do not have enough advocates to be in court for every single case, whether it's criminal or civil. And so we started a court navigation program, for people that wanted to help their community and sit in court to support our survivors. They're connected to an advocate or a navigator, so that the volunteer in the courtroom can, contact an advocate to come into the courtroom if need be. But we wanted to make sure that every single survivor had someone sitting that with them in court just to be with them, just to make sure that they felt supported, and just kind of helping them around the courthouse and just, doing some of the general things, that can be really time consuming. But that was really important to us. What we found is some of our best volunteers in that program were retirees. So whether they were a retired law enforcement or a retired counselor, retired minister, they love coming back and giving back, in a way that, they may come in for a court trial, and support the survivor and the family through that entire process.
What a great idea. I hope that exists all around the country because, man, that sounds like that would be vitally important for a survivor to feel like they
Yes.
have somebody there as a support system. I mean, knowing that abusers often isolate survivors of domestic violence and
Mhm.
make sure that they don't have a support system,
Right.
like friends or family. I mean, wow,
Mhm.
that is a really cool program. I hope people
Yeah,
take advantage of that.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Sonia, so much for sharing all of the information about your work at the Family Justice Center. We appreciate it. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and doing this. It was super fun.
Yeah, of course. This podcast was brought to you by the Family Justice Center Alliance, a program of Alliance for Hope International. To locate a Family Justice Center near you, visit allianceforhope.org. Voices of Hope is hosted by me, Amanda Kippert, and edited by Produce Your Podcast, which can be found at produceyourpodcast.com. This podcast is supported by the Office on Violence Against Women through the U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the views of the U.S. Department of Justice or the Office on Violence Against Women. Whether you're experiencing abuse, questioning a relationship, or looking to learn more about domestic violence, you can find information, resources, and support, and search for advocates in your area at domesticshelters.org.